Imagine giving 8 straight years of your life to a neighborhood, paying every fee, following every rule, being the quiet, dependable resident, only for one power-hungry tyrant with a clipboard to decide your peace is no longer allowed. That's exactly what hit me last Wednesday. My name's Damon Ruiz, a commercial ventilation tech in Sunshore, Louisiana, the kind of heat that makes asphalt feel soft and air conditioning a religion. Every morning since 2015, I dragged myself out of bed at 4:45 a.m. to swim at our community pool. Those early laps kept me sane through double-shift summers and a divorce so brutal it could have been televised. The pool wasn't luxury to me. It was survival. 42 laps in perfectly cooled 79-degree water before sunrise, the sound of gentle ripples against tile, that faint mix of chlorine and honeysuckle from the courtyard vines. It was the only place where my mind stopped racing. Then she showed up. Melinda Harrow, the newest arrival in Crestline Ridge. Picture a suburban monarch disguised as a realtor who believes every neighborhood exists purely for her personal catalog shoots. Freshly divorced, mid-50s, blonde bob sharp enough to slice drywall, designer sunglasses that never left her face, and the voice of a woman who'd file a complaint if sunlight hit her lawn at the wrong angle. Within 5 months, she had maneuvered herself into HOA president, carrying that hard leather clipboard like it was a sacred text written specifically to punish people with tool belts. Crestline Ridge was supposed to be idyllic, 210 townhomes, a heated pool big enough for a swim team, manicured courtyards, a monthly HOA fee of $175 that I paid without a single late charge in 8 years. But Melinda had a mission. At her first board meeting, she said, "I've noticed certain residents using amenities at unconventional hours." Her perfume, something violently floral, filled the clubhouse like a fog of passive aggression. Trent, a night shift paramedic, raised his hand. "Some of us only get off work at sunrise. That's the only time we can swim." Melinda smiled with the warmth of a malfunctioning freezer. "Then perhaps it's time we adjust expectations to maintain a higher standard." You could taste the tension, like metal. And then the malfunctions began. Security cameras mysteriously offline. Access cards not registering. Pool lights flickering whenever blue-collar residents showed up. Coincidence? No chance. Then came my morning. I approached the pool, towel over my shoulder, mind set on my routine, only to find a chain wrapped around the gate and a bright red sign declaring, "Pool access suspended, safety review in progress." Out stepped Melinda, flanked by a bored rent-a-guard who looked like he regretted every life choice that led him there. "Mr. Ruiz," she announced, "you're prohibited from pool use until further notice due to several reports of aggressive conduct." Aggressive conduct. Me. While I was 240 miles away on a job. That was the moment she crossed the line she could never uncross. Because once Melinda tried to rewrite reality itself, she had no idea she just ignited a fight she could never control. Some people swing hammers. Some people file taxes. And some people wake up every morning hungry for control. The kind of control that makes them rewrite rules just to watch someone else fall in line. That was Melinda Harrow's specialty, and I was about to learn just how deep her obsession ran. When she told me I was banned from the pool, I didn't argue. Not then. Not with a rent-a-cop blocking the gate like he was guarding nuclear launch codes. I walked back to my place, Unit 18C, second floor corner, trying to breathe through the rage clawing at my throat. Inside, I tossed my towel across the counter and opened the email app on my phone. There it was. A message from Crestline Ridge Compliance Center, a name Melinda had invented 2 weeks earlier, even though the center was just her laptop and a badly designed HOA template. Subject line, behavioral review notice, immediate response required. I clicked it. Apparently, someone had reported me for verbally threatening residents, creating tension at community amenities, and displaying confrontational body language. Body language, that was her new tactic. A man can't defend himself against body language. The accusations were time-stamped. The same morning I was installing ventilation fans in a warehouse 2 cities away. The proof. My clocked hours and GPS-logged service reports. She didn't care. Crestline Ridge used to be run by 3 neighbors who rotated volunteer duties, fixing sprinklers, organizing yard sales, making sure the courtyard lights didn't flicker like a haunted carnival. Then Melinda arrived and turned the HOA into a personal regime. Within months, she rewrote the bylaws. New amenity etiquette guidelines, mandatory dress code for the pool curfew policies, noise restrictions so vague you could get cited for laughing too loud on a Friday night, fitness area limitations that somehow only applied to people not in her social circle, anyone who questioned her. Magically hit with violations. The first victim was Lenora Kim, a kindergarten teacher who kept potted basil on her balcony. Melinda claimed the basil disrupted architectural uniformity. Next was Casey Redwood, a barista who parked half an inch over the line one evening. He woke up to a $125 fine for endangering foot traffic. But Melinda didn't just enforce rules. She hunted for opportunities. My early morning swims, she'd been watching, taking notes, waiting for the perfect moment to strike, and the worst part, nobody wanted to stand up to her. Fear spreads like mold, slowly at first, then everywhere. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the courtyards, I walked the path toward the clubhouse. I needed answers, logic, anything. Inside, the lights hummed overhead. And there she sat at the center table, a queen surveying her miniature kingdom. Clipboard ready. "Mr. Ruiz," she said without looking up, "if you're here to dispute your conduct report, please understand that all decisions are final until the next compliance cycle." Translation, she made the rules, she enforced the rules, and she answered to absolutely no one. But Melinda had made a mistake. She assumed I'd back down. She assumed I'd fold. She assumed wrong. Because once someone decides you don't deserve a voice, proving them wrong becomes more than a choice. It becomes a mission. There's a moment, a very specific moment, when you realize someone isn't just enforcing rules, they're manufacturing them to trap you. And standing inside that silent clubhouse, face to face with Melinda Harrow, I felt that realization hit like a punch to the ribs. Her pen scratched across the clipboard as if she were signing off on my entire existence. I stood there trying to steady my breathing, trying not to let anger become the only thing speaking for me. "Melinda," I said, "those accusations aren't just wrong, they're impossible. I wasn't even here during the times you listed." Her eyes finally lifted, cold and judgmental. "People feel unsafe, Mr. Ruiz. Perception is reality. Perception is reality. The favorite motto of every tyrant who can't prove anything." I left before the rage boiling in my stomach turned into something she'd use against me. Sunshore's humid evening air smacked me in the face as I walked back to my unit. A couple across the courtyard turned away when I passed, 2 people I'd helped carry groceries for not long ago. Fear spreads quietly, but isolation, that hits like thunder. I spent the next hour reading through the HOA bylaws, something I should have done years ago. But back then, Crestline Ridge was run with common sense, not by someone who weaponized paragraphs. And there it was. Section 4.12, resident conduct disputes must include verifiable evidence. Not hearsay, not perception, evidence, which meant Melinda's entire accusation was built on sand. But even if the rules were on my side, I knew she'd find a way to twist them until they bent like wire. Later that night, my neighbor Theo Vance, a quiet electrician who mostly kept to himself, knocked on my door. He looked nervous, the kind of nervous that had sweat forming at the hairline. "Damon, I probably shouldn't be here," he whispered, "but you need to know something." He stepped inside and closed the door gently, as though it might explode if he shut it too hard. "I heard Melinda talking on the courtyard path earlier," he said. "She told someone she was planning to clean house by the end of the month. Said you were problem number one." I felt my pulse spike. "She actually said that?" Theo nodded. "And she also said she's going to make an example out of you so nobody else questions her authority." There it was. Confirmation, not suspicion, not paranoia, truth. Melinda wasn't acting out of order, she was on a mission. A mission to wipe out dissent, starting with me. Theo swallowed hard. "Look, I shouldn't get involved, but I've lived here long enough to know the pattern. She pushes until people break, then she uses that to justify whatever she wants." After he left, I sat on the edge of my sofa staring at the floor, feeling the walls of my own home closing in. She wanted to control everything, the pool, the residence, the narrative. But the one thing she couldn't control, what I did next, because now it wasn't about pool access, or a bogus report, or even my reputation. It was about standing up to someone who believed she was untouchable. And when someone like that believes you're easy to break, proving them wrong becomes the only thing that matters. Every neighborhood has a breaking point. That moment when people finally realize the person barking orders isn't protecting anything. She's controlling everything. And the moment Melinda tried to corner me publicly, that breaking point arrived faster than anyone expected. Saturday morning, Crestline Ridge held its monthly community check-in, basically a glorified meeting where residents pretended to care about budget updates while silently judging the snack table. Normally, maybe 30 people showed up, but this time, nearly the whole neighborhood packed into the clubhouse. Melinda had sent out an email the night before stating, "Mandatory attendance recommended, ongoing safety concerns will be addressed." The phrasing alone told me she was planning another stunt. As I stepped inside, conversations dipped. Eyes shifted. Some people avoided me, some looked guilty, some looked relieved I'd shown up like they wanted a hero but didn't want to be one. Melinda stood at the front, perfectly centered under the ceiling fan so her hair fluttered dramatically like she was filming a political ad. "Welcome, residents," she began, tapping her clipboard. "There are matters of conduct that must be addressed immediately." She looked at me, not subtly, not politely, directly. "Certain individuals," she said, drawing out the words, "have created repeated disturbances and safety concerns. As your HOA president, it is my duty to protect our community." A few heads turned toward me. Others stayed down. The room felt tense enough to crack. I stepped forward. "Melinda, if this is about those reports," she lifted her hand sharply. "That will be addressed in due time, Mr. Ruiz." The room murmured. Then she reached into her folder and pulled out a sealed envelope. Due to repeated behavioral issues, she announced, "We are issuing a temporary suspension of all amenity access for Mr. Damon Ruiz until further evaluation." Gasps. Whispers. Someone in the back muttered, "You've got to be kidding." Melinda smiled like she was revealing a new luxury product. This decision was made to ensure the comfort of all residents. That was the moment something snapped, not in me, but in the room. Lenora Kim stood up first, the quiet teacher who'd been fined for Basel. "This is ridiculous," she said, voice trembling but steady. "Damon has never caused problems here. You're abusing your position." Melinda's eyes narrowed. "Lenora, you're out of order." Then Casey Redwood stood. And why does Damon lose access while your friends get away with blaring music past midnight? Then Theo, from behind the crowd. And what about the safety concern you fabricated about me last month? Huh, should we talk about that? One by one, residents rose, timid voices turning bold. It wasn't a rebellion, it was an awakening. Melinda slammed her clipboard on the table. You are all misinformed. I am following protocol. But for the first time, her voice didn't feel dominant. It felt cornered. She grabbed her folder, stormed out, and nearly ripped the clubhouse door off its hinges. And just like that, the room shifted, the air, the people, the energy, as if everyone finally recognized the truth they'd been avoiding. Melinda wasn't protecting Crestline Ridge. She was terrorizing it. And once a tyrant realizes the crowd isn't afraid anymore, that's when they become the most dangerous and the most desperate. A cornered ruler doesn't retreat, they lash out. And after the residents pushed back in that clubhouse, Melinda Harrow wasn't just angry, she was humiliated. And someone like her only knows one response: escalation. The next morning, I woke to 3 new emails from the HOA, all sent between 2:14 a.m. and 3:02 a.m., which already told me more about Melinda's state of mind than the words themselves. Violation notice number 1, unauthorized balcony Dacre, for a wind chime I'd had for 8 years. Violation notice number 2, unapproved window covering, for blinds installed by the previous management. Violation notice number 3, improper use of community walkway. I apparently walked too fast near a landscaped area. It was laughable, almost cartoon-level desperate, but it also meant she was accelerating. If she couldn't win with lies, she'd drown me in technicalities. I threw on a shirt and headed out for air, but halfway down the stairs, I saw something that made my stomach drop. 3 security guards, not the usual bored rent-a-cop, but actual hired enforcers in black polos, were standing near the pool gate. And Melinda? She stood with them, arms crossed, sunglasses reflecting the sunrise like she was about to lead a SWAT raid. When she spotted me, she smirked. "Mr. Ruiz," she called out sweetly, "you're currently under a temporary amenity suspension. Approaching restricted areas may result in a legal response." A legal response. She was talking like she owned the property outright. "I'm walking to my truck," I said calmly. She tilted her chin. "The walkway near the pool counts as an amenity-adjacent zone. We can't risk further disturbances." One of the guards shifted uncomfortably. Even he could tell this wasn't security, it was a public power display. But I didn't give her the satisfaction of reacting. Instead, I walked the long way around the courtyard, her eyes burning holes into my back the entire time. I knew what this was. She was sending a message to everyone watching: defy me, and this is what happens. Later that afternoon, Theo knocked again, this time looking furious instead of nervous. "Damon, she's losing it," he said. "She fined me for having a ladder on my truck." "A ladder? I'm an electrician. I literally need it." Then came Lenora. Then Casey. Then 4 more neighbors, each with fresh violation notices, each issued within hours of the meeting. Melinda was punishing anyone who had dared speak up. And the thing about collective punishment, it doesn't silence people. It unites them. By sunset, a small group had gathered outside my unit. Not a mob, more like people who finally realized they weren't alone. "We're tired of being scared," Lenora said. "If she's coming after you, she's coming after all of us." For the first time since this mess started, something in my chest loosened. I wasn't fighting alone anymore. But that unity came with a cost. Because Melinda had been embarrassed publicly, challenged openly, and confronted repeatedly. And someone like her doesn't surrender. They retaliate. And when a person fueled by ego decides losing isn't an option, the line between authority and obsession disappears fast. There's a difference between someone misusing authority and someone becoming completely unhinged by it. And the moment Melinda realized the neighborhood wasn't bending anymore, she crossed that line so fast it was like watching a fuse burn toward dynamite. By Monday morning, the entire community felt off. The air was heavy, not the usual Louisiana humidity, but something tight, tense, on edge. People whispered in parking lots. Windows cracked open just enough for neighbors to share quick conversations before shutting them again like they were afraid someone might be listening. Melinda had turned Crestline Ridge into a Cold War. I stepped outside to head to work and stopped short. A bright yellow sticker had been slapped onto my truck windshield. Vehicle out of compliance, towing pending. Why? Because my license plate frame did not match approved neighborhood aesthetics. It was black, just a black frame, exactly like dozens of other cars in the lot. As I peeled off the sticker, I noticed Melinda standing near the leasing office, talking into her phone with the posture of someone reporting suspicious activity during a spy operation. The second she saw me, she said loudly, "Yes, that's him. Yes, he's leaving the property now. No, he's not supposed to." My jaw clenched. This wasn't about rules. This was surveillance, targeting, obsession. Before I could respond, an elderly resident named Arthur Redden approached with his cane tapping the pavement. "Son," he said quietly, "don't let that woman bait you. She's hunting for reactions now." I nodded, trying to swallow the frustration. "Thanks, Arthur," he sighed. "In 40 years of HOA living, I've never seen someone this determined to break good people." That stuck with me the entire drive to work. But things escalated again the moment I returned home. Around 6 p.m., a sheriff's cruiser sat parked near the main entrance. Curious residents peeked through blinds. Kids stopped riding their bikes. A group of neighbors huddled near the mailboxes whispering. Then the deputy stepped out and asked, "Are you Damon Ruiz?" My stomach dropped. "What's going on?" He exhaled like he hated what he was about to say. "We received a complaint stating you were harassing board members and creating a hostile environment. We're required to follow up." "Of course." "Melinda again." Before I could speak, Lenora rushed over. "This is out of control. Damon hasn't bothered anyone." Theo added, "This is harassment. She's manipulating the system." The deputy glanced between us, realizing something wasn't right. "You all seem pretty calm, not exactly hostile." I showed him the stack of bogus violations. He scanned them, raised his eyebrows, and nodded slowly. "Yeah, I've seen this before. Someone abusing authority to create a paper trail." He left without taking action. But Melinda wasn't done. That night, another email arrived, a formal notice scheduling a mandatory behavioral hearing to determine whether I posed a community threat. The wording was deliberate, terrifying, strategic. Melinda wasn't waiting for me to slip. She was manufacturing the fall, and she was running out of boundaries to cross. Because when someone becomes consumed by the idea of destroying you, the storm that follows doesn't come quietly. It tears through everything in its path. There's something terrifying about watching a person lose their grip on reality, especially when they've convinced themselves they're the hero of a story they're actually destroying. And by the time Melinda scheduled that so-called behavioral hearing, she wasn't running an HOA anymore. She was waging a personal crusade. The hearing was set for Thursday evening in the clubhouse. No witnesses listed. No details provided. Just a demand that I show up to defend my pattern of disruptive behavior. Pattern. She loved that word. I spent all day at work replaying conversations in my head, trying to figure out if she actually believed her lies or if she was fully aware she was orchestrating a takedown. When I got home, neighbors were already gathered outside, whispering in small pockets. The tension was a living thing in the courtyard, like everyone sensed something was about to snap. At 6:58 p.m., I walked toward the clubhouse. Inside, the long meeting table had been rearranged into a tribunal setup. 3 chairs on one side, one lonely chair on the other, positioned like an interrogation. Melinda sat in the center seat, posture rigid, lips pressed into a smug line. On her left was Graham Patrick, a board member who only ever nodded at whatever she said. On her right, an empty chair she'd clearly labeled security oversight. Theatrics. Everything was theatrics. "Mr. Ruiz," she said, folding her hands, "please sit." Her voice had that brittle sweetness people use before they twist the knife. I sat, calm, silent. Melinda lifted a packet of papers dramatically. These documents detail numerous reports made by residents expressing fear, discomfort, and concern about your conduct. As president, I must determine whether your presence jeopardizes community harmony. She slid the packet toward me. I flipped through the pages. Half the resident statements had no names. The other half were signed with initials that didn't match any actual residents I knew. "I see you've redacted the names," I said evenly. "For their safety," she replied. "So I can't verify a single claim. They're verified internally." Internal verification, meaning she wrote them herself. She straightened her blazer. "We'll begin with Statement Ominous 12. It reads, Mr. Ruiz used aggressive body language and intimidation tactics during a hallway encounter." I looked up. "What hallway? What date?" "That's not relevant," she snapped. Before I could respond, the clubhouse door swung open. Lenora stepped in first, then Casey, then Theo, then Arthur, then half a dozen more residents behind them. Melinda's eyes widened. "This is a closed hearing," she barked. "No," Casey said firmly. "This concerns the entire community." Theo stepped forward. "I want to know who wrote the statement claiming Damon threatened me, because I sure didn't." Arthur raised his cane. "And I want to know why you filed a complaint under my name while I was at a doctor's appointment." Murmurs exploded through the room. Melinda's confidence cracked, visibly, like a thin layer of ice under too much weight. Residents flooded the space, forming a barrier between me and the board table. Their presence wasn't loud or chaotic. It was united, determined. I watched Melinda's face shift, indignation melting into panic. She hadn't expected this. Not the crowd, not the resistance, not the truth pushing its way into her perfect little hearing. And for the first time, she looked genuinely trapped by her own lies. Because when a person builds their power on false accusations, the moment real voices rise up, that borrowed throne starts to crumble beneath them. When the truth finally forces its way into the room, it doesn't knock. It bursts in and exposes every crack, every lie, every secret someone thought they could bury. And with half the neighborhood standing inside that clubhouse, Melinda Harrow's carefully crafted empire began shaking from the foundation up. The room buzzed with a kind of electricity I'd never felt before, not anger, not chaos, clarity. People who had been silent for months were suddenly stepping forward, their fear replaced by something stronger, the realization that they weren't alone. Melinda slammed her gavel, an object she'd bought online to appear more official. "This is out of order," she hissed. "Only board-approved participants may attend." But no one moved, not a single resident backed away. Graham Patrick, sitting beside her, cleared his throat weakly. "Maybe we should listen," quiet, Melinda snapped, her voice cracking. That crack, it was everything. Lenora stepped to the front of the crowd, holding up her phone. "I have screenshots," she said. "The ones from when you threatened to fine me for unapproved behavior if I didn't stop teaching kids in the courtyard." A ripple of shock spread through the group. Next, Theo raised his hand. "You filed a complaint saying Damon yelled at me in the parking lot. I showed that to my sister last night. She pointed out I was out of town that whole week visiting her." More murmurs. Melinda's face flushed, blotchy, and furious. Arthur tapped his cane on the tile floor. And you forged a signature under my name for a complaint I never filed. He leaned forward. That's fraud, Melinda, not a misunderstanding. Fraud. The word hung in the air like smoke. Melinda's expression twisted. You people have no idea the pressure I'm under. This community is falling apart, and I'm the only one willing to keep order. No, Casey said quietly. You're the one tearing it apart. Melinda reached for her folder, flipping through pages, searching for anything to regain control. Damon, she said sharply, pointing at me, you have a history of defiance. Where's your evidence? I asked calmly. Silence. Real silence. The kind that exposes truth. She swallowed. You don't understand how much work I do behind the scenes. How many problems I prevent. That's not leadership, Lenora said. That's ego. Residents nodded. Dozens of them, and then the moment everything shifted. Graham quietly stood from his seat. He removed the lanyard bearing his HOA vice president badge and placed it on the table. I'm done, he said. I can't be part of this. Melinda's jaw dropped. You traitor, but he kept talking. I've watched you lie, escalate conflicts, falsify documents, and manipulate residents. I should have stopped it sooner. He turned to the crowd. I'm resigning effective immediately. A shockwave rolled through the room. Melinda stood, shaking. You think you can just walk away from me? I built this board. I built this community. No, I said calmly. You built a dictatorship. Her eyes snapped toward me, wild, desperate, spiraling. And in that moment, everyone saw it clearly. The unraveling of someone who had lost control of her narrative and her grip on reality. Because when a person's power begins to crumble, their next move isn't rational. It's the kind of desperate act that exposes who they truly are. There's a point where a person stops trying to hide their intentions, where every mask slips at once. And when Melinda realized the room no longer feared her, she didn't apologize, she didn't retreat, she detonated. The silence in the clubhouse was suffocating. Dozens of residents stood shoulder to shoulder, blocking her escape route, not physically, but with the sheer weight of truth. The air felt thick, buzzing, waiting for what she'd do next. Melinda's breathing became sharp and uneven. Her gaze darted across the faces in the crowd, searching desperately for anyone, to support her. But even her usual loyal followers avoided her eyes. Listen to me, she barked, saliva catching on the words. You're all being manipulated. Damon has been stirring trouble since the day he moved in. He's dangerous. Casey cut her off. No one here believes that anymore. Her lips tightened into a trembling line. Then she made her move. She reached into her bag, pulled out a stack of papers, and slammed them onto the table so hard the pens jumped. These are removal petitions, she declared loudly. I have signatures from multiple residents requesting that Damon be evicted for the safety of Crestline Ridge. Gasps spread across the room. I stepped forward, grabbed the stack, and flipped through it. My stomach twisted. Names forged, dozens of them, handwriting inconsistent. Some of the signatures belonged to residents who had moved out years ago. You really forged residents' names? Lenora whispered, horrified. Melinda's voice cracked like thin ice. I had to. None of you were doing what needed to be done. Her desperation spilled out with every word. Theo pointed at the papers. This is illegal, Melinda. Not just unethical, illegal. She snatched the documents back, clutching them to her chest like a child protecting a broken toy. You're all turning against me, she screamed. After everything I've done for this place. Arthur took a slow step forward, cane tapping gently on the floor. Melinda, you did all of this to yourself. That sentence broke something inside her. Her face contorted with a mix of fury and humiliation. I built this community. She shrieked, without me, this place would fall apart. You're nothing without me. The room erupted, not in shouting, but in a unified, collective disbelief. And then something happened I will never forget. Graham returned to the microphone stand, the one she always used, and spoke calmly. Effective immediately, I'm calling an emergency vote of no confidence. Melinda froze. You don't have the authority. The bylaws say any board member can call for one if the president displays misconduct. Her jaw went slack. Hands rose around the room, one after another, then dozens more residents voting her out. Silently, powerfully, Melinda watched them trembling, shaking her head like a child refusing reality. You can't do this, she whispered. You can't remove me. I am the HOA. No, I said quietly, you were. She stared at me, not with power, but with pure, broken disbelief. And in that moment, she wasn't a ruler losing her throne. She was a person watching her entire illusion collapse. Because when someone who's built their world on control finally loses it, their next move isn't surrender. It's the kind of reckless act that reveals just how far they were willing to go. Some endings explode. Some endings crumble. But the most satisfying kind. The kind where the truth stands in the center of the room, undeniable, and the person who tried to tear everything apart finally faces the consequences they created with their own hands. The vote was over. Every resident's raised hand hung like a sentence in the air, calm, firm, final. Melinda Harrow, the self-appointed queen of Crestline Ridge, had been officially removed from power. But she didn't sit down, she didn't step back. She didn't even blink, she snapped. You think a little vote can stop me? She shouted, her voice shaking with pure, unfiltered rage. I run this community, I make the decisions, you're nothing without me. She grabbed her clipboard, the symbol of her rule, and hurled it across the room. It hit the wall with a loud crack, startling several people in the front row. Then she stormed toward the exit, pushing through residents who stepped away like she was a live wire. The door slammed so hard it rattled the windows. For a long moment, no one moved. No one spoke. We all just stood there, absorbing the quiet that followed the storm. Graham finally exhaled and said, we need to document everything. Every forged signature, every bogus report, every violation she faked. Theo nodded. I'll help. She's been targeting half the neighborhood. One by one, people stepped forward, residents who had stayed silent for years, revealing screenshots, emails, threats, and messages Melinda thought would never see daylight. It wasn't just misconduct. It was a trail of intimidation. The next morning, a sheriff's unit arrived to collect statements. Not for me, for her. The forged petitions, the falsified reports, the harassment, it all added up. Later that week, she was served a restraining order from the HOA she once weaponized. Residents gathered outside as the deputy handed her the papers. Melinda's face went pale, not angry pale, but terrified pale, the look of someone realizing their power had evaporated. She pointed at me as the deputy walked away. This is your fault, she spat, all of it. No, I said softly, this was your choice. She opened her mouth to fire back, but nothing came out. For the first time, she had no audience, no authority, no control. She just turned, got into her car, and sped out of Crestline Ridge without looking back. And for the first time in months, the air in the neighborhood felt normal. Light. Peaceful, kids played outside again. Residents chatted near the mailboxes. People laughed, not nervously, but freely. Crestline Ridge wasn't perfect, but it was finally ours again. Because when a community refuses to be controlled, even the strongest bully learns that power only exists as long as people allow it. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like the video, comment your thoughts or your own HOA stories below, and subscribe to the channel so you never miss another wild story like this. Thanks for watching.